Hi, everybody. This is Tom West, and thanks again for hopefully joining us either live or on the recorded webinar for the program that I did with Howard Gleckman at Goodwin House in the latter part of July. This is a quick video follow-up for some ancillary questions that we weren't able to address during the program itself and some that came in a little bit later. So why don't we get to it? What I've got here is a handful of questions that came in. The first one, and I kind of tried to organize these a little bit. What changes in finances have been made by the pandemic? Best way to describe, and I'm not exactly sure what the questioner was zeroing in on, but I thought I would pull this question because the biggest change in finances, whether you're using yourself as a point of reference or you're thinking of the broader economy and whatnot in terms of finances, is the thing that's changed is the answer to this question: where is the money going to come from? So if you're thinking individually, where is the money going to come from to pay for your own housing, your own healthcare? Part of that's changed because I believe that the way you structure, for example, your portfolio, or the way that you can anticipate the possibility of future taxes impacting how much money is left over from your income, I think those are some of the things that are going to be changing. It's part of the reason that Howard and I were so convicted about making sure that you plan ahead for as many different scenarios that could be happening in your future. And the second question, this one zeroed in a little bit more on government tax revenues. I want to go back to my response to the first question. Where's the money going to come from? Right now that we know on local and state governments are really, really short of tax receipts to pay for teachers and police and all the stuff that ends up happening on the state and local level. So where is the money going to come from? I don't have, as of the date I'm recording this on the 12th of August, there isn't any message from the federal government that there's going to be a big bailout of state and local governments. So I would think soberly that we should anticipate higher taxes. I think the other piece too, sitting here on April 12th, this is the day after candidate Biden chose Kamala Harris to be a running mate. What's going to be happening on the federal side of things? You know, the orientation right now, where I'm sitting here in the middle of August, it looks like there's a pretty reasonable probability to expect a Democrat being pretty competitive for that White House. I think that that also augurs a likelihood of a different kind of tax regime. And that's going to also change the way that we need to plan ahead. Changes in taxes, both on the income, on the capital gain, and on the estate taxes, in terms of things that could be impacting you as the year goes on. I think that's another impetus to have to plan ahead. So let's go on to some other questions. How does the cost of long-term care compare with the cost of healthcare at a continuing care retirement community? So this is an interesting question, and I'd also throw this back to Lindsay and the team at Goodwin House to be able to help out if this isn't sufficient. But the costs of healthcare, it depends greatly on two variables. The first one is whether you're comparing the cost of an existing resident that is going through different levels of care inside of a community. There's one answer there. And then there's another answer, which is somebody coming from outside the community and then coming into the continuing care community just to have the assisted living or the nursing facility or the memory support? So let me break it down for you. For people that are already in continuing care retirement communities, there are typically two different kinds of contracts. I'm generalizing here. There's going to be probably more specifics that would pertain to your individual situation. But generally speaking, the two different kinds of contracts are something called a standard contract, where the monthly amount that you pay basically stays the same with a cost of living increase, regardless of what level of care you need. But you end up paying for that certainty of costs with typically a higher entrance fee and higher monthly fees. And a lot of the contracts that Goodwin House, for example, does are these kind of standard contracts. But there's another kind of contract that basically is a more of a pay-as-you-go contract. this is something where if somebody moves into independent living, it's less expensive. And if they move to assisted living, it's more expensive. And if you move to nursing, it's more expensive than there. And it sort of ladders up depending on your need. Those costs are a little bit more consistent with what you see in the broader community. So in the broader community, not in continuing care retirement communities, people have to pay typically a higher amount for the same amount of care because they're not buying into a sort of a prepaid system like you see in continuing care communities. Depending on what kind of contract you either have or what you're looking at, the other observation that I would have for your planning purposes is continuing care retirement communities, one of the things that they offer is some predictability of the availability of care and some predictability about what the future costs might look like. There is much more certainty about those, even if they're going to be going up over time, than with people that have contracts with continuing care retirement communities than out in the free market, where you see much more likelihood of higher spikes in the cost of care because they have to be more respondent to market forces and labor forces and things like that. So next question. If one over the age of 78 doesn't have long-term care insurance, how should they financially plan for their future? Great question. I think that you got to model out what are the kinds of outcomes that you're most hopeful for. If somebody wants to stay at home no matter what, then I think that you need to model out what are the different kinds of things that you need to do to make your home the most enabling environment and safest environment for you. And you have to figure out how those kinds of things are going to be paid for. And you have to see, well, given those kinds of expenses and the possibility of importing care into your home, you got to have a strategy on how you're going to pay for it. So how should you plan? Well, I think that the answer is embedded in the question. I think that you should plan for the future that you're most hopeful for. Once you model that out, you take a look at what are the different kinds of things that might take us off that plan, like sort of contingencies, and then you model those things out too. You come up with good assumptions about where am I going to be, how am I going to have any care needs serviced, and then what those are going to cost. And then you start coming up with strategies on how you pay for them. But that's the way to do it. Please discuss the affordability of long-term care insurance for people in their 70s and beyond. Oof, we got a lot of questions on long-term care insurance, so I'll do my best. Long-term care insurance for folks in their 70s is really expensive. One of the things that Howard mentioned in the seminar was really the only things right now that are on the market that are doing any kind of volume are these hybrid life insurance, long-term care insurance policies. And those end up being pretty significant premiums, significant for folks in their 70s. I would set expectations for well into the six figures in terms of premiums. Candidates for those kinds of insurances, certainly have to be healthy enough and whatnot. But you also have to have the right financial profile, cash that isn't being used to support standard of living or something like that. That's kind of what it looks like for affordability for new purchasers of long-term care insurance. And that gets us to questions that we got about what's on the screen right now. My long-term care insurance recently increased premiums. Can I expect these kinds of premium increases in the future? Boy, that's a good question. Same thing with the second one. Should I keep my long-term care insurance or drop it? I think that one of the things that we discussed in the seminar is retail long-term care insurance is clearly not profitable for the insurance industry. They have to go through a process with the insurance commissioners to get any premium increases approved. And clients in my own sort of book of business regularly ask me these same questions all the time. In a nutshell, I do think that you have to expect premium increases in the future. I don't know what percentage those are going to be because there's this whole process that the insurance commissioner has to approve it, and it's somewhat based on individual experience by specific companies. But what I'll share with you is the process that you use has got to be making decisions just on the incremental increase of premium that an insurance company is offering you and not what might happen in the future. Narrow your line of sight just to the choice that you've got on the table in front of you. So if the premium is going to be going up by $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, whatever it ends up being, I think you got to do two things. One, you have to confirm whether or not this is affordable for you. And if it is affordable, number two, is that extra premium the best option? And by thinking that extra premium is the best option, don't forget that you got to compare it to whatever else is out there. Like if I drop the policy because my premium is higher than I expected, what's the other option that you have to pay for care you might need? Before making any changes in your policy, make sure you have the answer to that question. If not for this long-term care insurance with an increased premium, what else am I going to do? I think that it's fair to say that most options are worse than the premium increase on the long-term care insurance. And I think I made an anecdote in the seminar that I have not recommended anybody dropping long-term care insurance in, I don't know, the last handful of years. That doesn't mean that I don't have very appropriately righteous seniors, shaking their fist and being angry about these premium increases, because you're right, that wasn't part of the plan, but things change and we have to adapt to the situation that we've got right now. Next question. From our experience with home health aides, it was not easy to find very good aides, even working with an agency. What will the future hold for finding qualified aides and paying them a better wage? If you go to the Q&A section at the tail end of the seminar, I would have you re-listen to that. I think that that's going to be tough sledding. I think that the future of finding qualified aides is going to be harder and harder. And the advice that I would give you is make sure, to the best degree possible, that you align yourself with employers of these aides that are paying above market wages to begin with and have a much higher retention of their existing aides. That's going to be something that I would start screening for right now. I think the future is going to be tough. I think there's going to be a lot of people that are going to age into a place where they all of a sudden start needing some help, and that help isn't readily available exclusive of their ability to pay for it. I think access to care is going to have a higher and higher premium in the future than what we're experiencing right now. Howard made good reference in the seminar about, being a health aide worker. I mean, it's tough work. It doesn't pay a lot. You're not getting a whole lot of new people into the workforce. And, I made reference, I asked Howard the question, like, well, what about immigration? Because with the way things are locked up in the US right now, I don't know where the new workforce is coming from. I don't have a good answer for that. I think that the variable that you're asking in this question is something that's really, really important for everybody's future when you're sort of planning ahead on this. I hope that this quick video was a good snapshot in answers to these follow-up questions. I want to thank Lindsay for hosting again at Goodwin House, and my co-presenter Howard. Look forward to future opportunities to be able to present. Thanks.